streaming. So hi everyone, welcome to the live stream on YouTube. This is Life Edge. And you're seeing right now Dr. Susan Nash. I'm Rick Zanotti. And we have our guest today, Shimeka Mack. She's with us today. And we are going to start the show right about now. So, are you ready, Susan?
I'm ready.
All right, she's ready. She's serious and ready. Here we go. All right. We're going to start the show recording in, let me set one thing up. Okay, in 3, 2, you're going to let me know when it turns red, and 1. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Life Edge, because life just doesn't have to be mediocre. I'm joined today by my good friend, Dr. Susan Nash. Hey, Susan, how are you?
I'm great. Rick, we have a very interesting guest today, and we're going to be talking about things that interest everyone, and that is specifically education.
Education. It should be fun. Here we go. You know, as I was listening to that, our Miss Jacqueline right next to me, she plays piano. Wonder if she could play
That's
that. Could you play that?
interesting.
She needs sheet music, but she could play that.
Yeah,
Pretty
that's
cool.
interesting. I played piano for years and years myself, and it's something that you will love all your life, Jacqueline.
Yeah, it's good. I used to drum, but I wasn't that good at it. So, end of story. Anyway.
I was obsessed. I wanted to create and build my own harpsichord. I was obsessed with Antonio Scarlatti, Antonio Soler, Domenico Scarlatti.
Interesting. Well, we have a great guest today and a very interesting topic, something that, like you said, affects all of us. Would you like to introduce her?
Well, it does, and I'm really happy to introduce Shimeka Mack. And I just want to say a few things before we get started. It's a very big privilege for me to have Shimeka here because she studied with me at the University of Oklahoma. She's one of my students, and she studied specifically to examine the educational system when she was doing her work at the College of Liberal Studies at the University of Oklahoma. So it's a great topic, and she did a great job. I was just really happy when she wanted to be, or agreed to be. I coerced her into being a guest. Anyway, welcome, Shimeka.
Hello. I have to say to Dr. Nash, thank you so much for inviting me. It is an absolute honor and a privilege, and I am so glad that you thought enough that you felt that I would be a great guest. So thank you so much.
Well, your story is really interesting. I mean, you have a classic example, or a classic example of a person who studied hard, did really well as a child, and then hit sort of a rough spot in the public school system, and yet you overcame all of that adversity. And I thought today maybe you could talk a little bit about that. But first of all, where did you go to school?
Well, I am as you know, a resident of Oklahoma, lifelong Okie. I am proud to be an Oklahoman. I graduated from the Northeast High School. It's a school on in the Oklahoma City metro area, and I graduated in the class of 1990.
That's nice. So you might describe a little bit about that part of Oklahoma City. It's very historical.
Well, you're right. It is a very historical part of Oklahoma City. The school, however, is located in an area that it's an urban area, an impoverished neighborhood. and and it is, like you said, it does have historic value.
It's quite interesting. And when you were living there, what was basically the demographic?
Well, now, and that's the thing. While I did attend Northeast High School, I didn't live in the community that the school was located in. I myself lived in a different neighborhood, which wasn't very far, but it was like a nice middle class neighborhood. So the school in which the neighborhood the neighborhood in which my school was located was largely African American, low family incomes. So it was an area that faced some challenges.
What were your first impressions of the school when you first went there?
I think like any freshman, you're just nervous. It's high school, and you just come from middle school, and that world is totally different. I think you kind of have that feeling of being eaten by wolves. So it was a very trying time, kind of scary for me. Overall, the population though and the students was positive. I think the kids were, for the most part, the children that I interacted with and my fellow classmates were very nice. I think that we had a good relationship, and so that was very good. I was involved in social activities, so pom-pom, matinee. So I did a lot of things, part of the band, so it was fun.
Well, so in your studies and in your school, you talk about some of the challenges that you've seen being faced by some of the public schools when it comes to children with special needs.
Well, now, I myself, my personal experience with school didn't involve special needs. I was in the core classes, if you will, just a regular core. My experiences were I really didn't feel that the curriculum or the education that I received was adequate. I don't think it equipped me with the tools necessary to be able to academically pursue my education after high school. So I was very much at a loss for that. When you speak about special needs, is that what you're asking me about in terms, like I did discuss with you, however, that my son had some issues with special needs?
Well, I was thinking about that, and I guess I was probably getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I'd like to focus on what you were saying a second ago, in that you did not believe that the school actually prepared you in the way that it should have. Can you specifically talk about some of those issues?
Well, I guess when you're attending a school, and when you're not aware of different ways, that's what you know. It's what you think is what's the norm and how everyone is learning. I want to say that was my senior year that I was part of the drama club, which led me to an event that took place at another school, and that school was Putnam City North. When I went to the school, that's when I became aware that there were differences, and that that the school that I was being educated at was the polar opposite to the school that I attended for that one event. It was just an absolutely altering experience, because I saw schools. The school was beautiful. It was nice. It was clean. There was resources. There was computers. There was up-to-date computers. There was air conditioning. There were just the whole air there. The ambient attitude was just completely different from the experiences that I had up until that point.
Well, I can tell you didn't go out to the track field. I had a hideous experience at that school. Putnam City North, was it? When I was a senior.
Yes, I believe it was Putnam City North. And that school too. Also, the difference was too when I traveled there, it was located in a very nice neighborhood. It was just everything about it was just just significantly different from what I had come to know attending the school that I had attended.
Well, I didn't actually go inside the school. I mean, I believe everything that you're saying, and I think it's true. But I remember I had tendonitis, and so I was on the track team, so they made me do the shot put. I was horrible, and I had to compete in the shot put at that school. Anyway, so specifically, so when you went to the school, when you went back, how did you feel? Did you feel a little bit, just helpless or betrayed?
I think my frustrations probably came a lot later, and that came when I started college. When I went to junior college, I think that's when it was solidified that there was a big difference in my education and a lot of the different classmates that were in the classes with me. When I left high school, I went to junior college, Rose State Junior College. And it was, when you're doing regular lecture, well, first of all, it's court classes, and when you're doing the different lectures and the different assignments, a lot of that involves classroom participation. And so when there was just regular dialogue and just talking, and I got to hear the differences between the students' backgrounds in high school that was very different from mine. A lot of the students that I took classes with were familiar with materials that we were studying, at that time. They had read books like The Invisible Man or, just your what's considered literary art, what we, regard as our Western civilization art. And they were familiar with it. They could speak to it. They had been educated towards it. They had taken trips out of the country. They knew a world beyond that city. They understood that there was a world beyond not only our state but our country. So it was just very different from my own personal experiences, and especially in a school that was, strapped for resources and didn't have access to some of the different things that those students did. So it became very apparent to me at that time that my experiences were nothing like a number of students that I was in college with.
That's really interesting. And as a person who's worked with developmental writing classes for many years, I would have to say that one of the main challenges is try to help sort of meet that gap between what's expected in college and what the competency levels are, or the ability levels are coming out of high school. And that is many, many times the case in high schools that are in disadvantaged neighborhoods. And the problem is that the people who come out of high school may have, 4-point all A's, and so they don't know that they don't really have that level.
Now,
I would have to agree with you. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Rick.
No, I was just going to tell you that your experience and mine were similar.
Really?
I went to an 80% black high school, and I wasn't quite black, so it was interesting. I didn't care. Nobody really cared. No. Everybody just got along. But it was a school that didn't graduate. Well, it graduated a lot of people, but there wasn't a lot of motivation always. And this is 20-something years before you. I went to LA High. Los Angeles High School was pretty much about 80% African American, maybe 15, almost 20% Asian, and about 4 white guys running around. So, but I totally understand where you're coming from, because, you don't think about it then. You're just at school, and you deal with whatever comes at you, however you want to deal with it. Then when you get out, you realize, I didn't get the best education, and I didn't care either at the moment. And then you have a decision to make. Do you continue on? Do you do something else with it? Do you change your attitude? Do you change where you go? I went to junior college too, and it took a while to get my head around, okay, I need to do something with myself that was different from just hanging around at high school and surviving, if you will. And there was a different time too, but there were a lot of drugs. There were a lot of the beginning of gangs then. That was just at the beginning of it all. But it was an experience. And when you talk about some of what you went through, I go, "Man, I really understand that. I've been there, done that." And it is interesting, your journey as you start realizing, hey, I could do something different. I could definitely do better with myself, and getting there. Because when you were in school, did you really think a lot about where you were?
And I have to say this. First of all, Rick, you're right. When you were talking, I was thinking the same thing. Like, okay, listening to your story, it sounded very similar to the experiences of my school, which was also predominantly African American. Mm-hmm. I think and it's unfortunate, if you don't mind me going back to that, it's unfortunate that continues to be a harsh reality for mm-hmm. schools that are largely minority and are located in impoverished neighborhoods, that they continue to underperform in comparison to schools where their population is more Caucasian. Mm-hmm. And it was my experience that you're not even really, college readiness isn't something that really is taught as just part of the core curriculum. That's not something that is, it's just simply about getting to the finish line, simply, graduating. There's very little talk about what do you do beyond, high school. Very little talk about adulthood and how you wield the tools that you gain during your education to help further your ability to be able to have, life attainment. And so it's just unfortunate, and that was really solidified for me and brought home, because when I talked to you about that experience that I had that one time, just one chance encounter at a high school left me with such an impression that I vowed that day that when it came time, should I ever have children, I would not allow them to attend, Oklahoma City Public Schools. That was how, I guess, I don't want to say damage, but for lack of a better word, that's really how I felt. That lack of preparedness and readiness that I was left with. I didn't want my children to find themselves battling those same things or dealing with the scars that were left behind from that. And so when it came time for me and my children to be able to look into schools, I completely left Oklahoma City School District.
And a lot of people say, "No, that's wrong," or no, it isn't. You know what? If you can do something better for your kids, why not? Now, still make your kids' life hard. That's part of it. You got to give them some adversity, but there's no reason why you have to do that. Now, we moved from New York to Los Angeles. We lived in a nice area, but the school was kind of changing in terms of it was starting to become a problem area. And yet, everybody got along. I mean, for the most part, there weren't a lot of issues. Like I've said, no matter what kind of school you go to, 5% of the population is going to be pretty much jerks, and the rest is pretty much normal people. And you get by. You just get by. Now, let me ask you,
and the schools that I attended, and I didn't, because of the crowd that I was with, I didn't gain for an issue for me, but it was an issue for the school. Yeah. And there was very much that issue of having to deal with gangs, having to deal with drugs, trying to keep children, focused, and that's what I mean. I think when you're operating in an environment like that, your focus kind of shifts to not let's talk about past high school, let's just get you to where you graduate from high school. Well, and I think that becomes the focus, and unfortunately the fallback is that for those who are looking beyond high school, those children aren't equipped with the tools necessary to be able to go beyond high school.
And there's one thing that you probably know well, I felt it, and that is when you go to school, you're not necessarily there to study. You're there to take care of yourself. You're there to be ready for violence if it erupts. And all of us, I noticed when I left the school, I was like, it's like you're at war. And when you get out of it, your nerves are a little bit frayed. You're much more alert. You keep your eyes way open. You know when trouble's about to hit. And you don't really get that in a more affluent school or anything like that. You might, but it's a little bit different. And I noticed that right away. And any school I was in after that just seemed easy. But I never felt it was bad. And my wife says, well, was that bad? No, it just was. And
I agree with you completely, Rick. It's because it's what you know.
Mhm.
So if it's your normal, then you don't regard it as being, like abnormal because it's what you know. And you're right. You do kind of have those environments in which you're attending a school, and it is somewhat where you're focused. Part of your focus, shall you say? It may not be all of it. I know for me, it wasn't all of it, but you did have to be vigilant
right.
of violence. You did have to be
Yeah.
vigilant of fighting. And those are again some of the things that I wanted my children to not have to deal with, not to have to contend with. I wanted their focus to be on education, on
Yep.
learning, and it's really hard when you have to divide your attention if you're worried about your own safety.
Right. That's true.
Well, here's something that I think is pretty different about what you're doing and you're able to do versus many of the students that are there in school now, and that is that you as a parent have made that decision and you are proactively protecting your son and trying to make the best possible educational experience that you can. But think about this, especially in the last 15 years in this sort of mass incarceration world we live in, and I'd say this is especially the case in Oklahoma, there are a lot of parents who would love to be able to do that for their children, but unfortunately, they got caught up in the get tough laws and they're in prison. And so the grandparent is trying to take care of them, or the foster system. Heaven helps them. What can we do?
And I just don't want to forget this. I'm going to come back to what you shared, but I did want to follow up with a comment that Rick said. And I do want to share with you, Rick, when you said about moving away, and I did have some guilt. There was that guilt of abandoning my community, abandoning my heritage, and like looking down as if like it wasn't good enough. And that by no means is, of course, what I was saying. It was just that you just don't want your children, you want better for them. And if you can find a way to do that, you use your resources and you use your decision making to make that happen. So I just wanted to go back to that because I did absolutely agree with what you were saying, because I did have that guilt, of leaving my community.
And that's normal.
But yeah.
It is normal.
It is. And Dr. Nash, to go back to what you were sharing, in terms of when you spoke about especially African American young men, and getting, I read an article once. It was an article and it was called In Order for Your Paper. It was a very interesting article. It was they called it the pipeline from schools to prison. And it was discussed that African American males were disproportionately receive charges, receive suspensions, receive certain punishments, if you will, that set them up more. They were more apt to go straight from the schools to prison. And as a mother of an African American male, that did alarm me. It did concern me, especially being in a school system that's predominantly white and feeling as if, will they be able to understand my African American son? And in light of that, should he have any issues? For example, my son does have a learning disability. And so social issues were one of those things that were one of the symptoms of his disability. And so I was so concerned, so alarmed about that, and understanding that disproportionately African American men, young boys, shall I say, do receive such harsher sentences or harsher punishments should they come into contact with school administration in a negative light. And I have to say that wasn't my personal experience. The schools and the administrators worked very passionately with me. I think that part of the reason why that happened, Dr. Nash, to answer your question, was parents have to develop that relationship. You have to be proactive. You have to demonstrate and show the schools that this child is loved. This child has people that recognize them as an investment, and a treasure. And I think when that passion comes across and you share that with the individuals that you entrust your children with every day. They then can share that with you, and whenever there are issues, they understand that there's someone on the other side of that bridge to support them as they support their children. So if I had to try to give any advice on how to address that, it's just for parents, especially parents of African American young men, because we are aware, unfortunately, that is a truth. That African American young men are punished sometimes a little bit, more significantly. Then go ahead and just build those relationships. Start working with the schools and helping them to understand, who you are, the background that child comes from, and to let them know that you are a resource at their disposal should they need you.
Yeah, that's a great point. I remember when I left high school, I used to practice martial arts. I still do, but I was also teaching back then, and we were still in the quote-unquote ghetto. It was not far from the high school. Most of the students in the school where I assistant taught were black. And everybody got along well, but my teacher was a teacher. He was Chinese, Hawaiian American, and he was a teacher, and he said, anybody can come to this school, but you better show me your grades. I want to meet your parents. And so there was involvement in the school with the community. And whenever there was a problem in the school, uncles, aunts, moms, dads, grandparents showed up. Problems ended really quickly. And that family involvement, like you just said, made all the difference in the world. Night and day.
It makes a world of difference.
Night and day.
Well,
And they felt proud of the work they did, whatever they achieved, and the family rejoiced in it. And that was something, again, it was another learning experience for me, watching a teacher do that and bring a community together in what they could. And then you realize after, people are people. It doesn't matter what color anybody is, right? I know right now the theme is everybody has to be a different color. Look, we're people. We all bleed red. And when I got into college, there was a football player I knew. He was an ex-pro ball player, a guy named Milton Davis, Dr. Milton Davis. He was my counselor. He was also my advanced biology teacher. He was black. He was also the guy who sponsored our martial arts club in school. And he was one of the best friends I ever had growing up. I mean, he was such an example. And he used to say, we can talk for hours and hours, and it doesn't matter what color you are, what color I am. It's all about who we are. Mm-hmm. And I love that guy. And for many, many years after school, we still kept in touch and everything. Then he passed away eventually, and to me, it was a big loss. But you meet people like that and go, he was a UCLA Bruin. He was an LA Ram. No, he was a Baltimore Colt, wide receiver, very well known in his day. That was in the 60s. And you just go, wow, it doesn't matter. And he always used to say, and the students loved him, every color. Nobody cared. And I think it's almost a shame what's going on today that we're so dividing by race, by religion, by color. Why? That's all I say is why. I don't see it.
Well, here's a question that I have, and what I wanted to get at is that Shimeka is really making sure that her children will do well because she's utterly committed. And clearly she had influences in her family too that instilled that kind of commitment and ability to really just stand by the child and try to do what's possible to inspire. But what happens if you have absentee parents? And that's happening more and more. And again, with mass incarceration, a lot of kids, their parents are in prison. In my case, my dad was out of town a lot because his company was in a different place. And my mother suffered from depression and was basically absentee. But yet, I was fortunate that I had great teachers and things that happened, that sort of divine intervention. But not everybody's so lucky. So what can we do, knowing that, and that every person needs kind of special attention because the schools are so pressured? Do you have any ideas, Shimeka?
That's a really big one. When you think of when you think of institutions, because that's what a family is, an institution, religion is an institution, school, education is an institution. Even what Rick was saying, when communities are doing social service programs, that's an institution for socializing children and helping them to develop those skills necessary for navigating life. When you have a situation where, unfortunately, the reality for some people is that their parents aren't able there to be that agent, if you will, that to help them to develop those tools, that's where you hope that the school can kick in and kind of fill that gap, if you will, to fill that void for that student to help them to be able to socialize and develop those necessary tools. And I think that with schools going through what they're going through now and facing the hardships that they are, even more so on a bigger scale than what I faced, or maybe even for what Rick and his generation, what he faced, I don't know what they'll do. When you have teachers who are facing, or who are maybe more apathetic about a broken system that doesn't seem that that it's repairable. When you have a system where there seems to be a disconnect between parents and the teachers, or parents are so having to work so much, or there's so much they're going through in order to try to provide for the family, that they're unable to be able to divide their attention from, just making sure that there's a roof, from supplying those basic needs for that child, to be able to be that emotional and foundation that they need. So the only thing that I can think of is we have to step in and do something in order to help change the system that we're faced with now, as far as, maybe supporting teachers as they go and try to fill in these gaps that are being left, because parents are so strapped, because parents are going through so much. And I wanted to make that clear. I'm not blaming anyone when I talk about these situations. It's just that it is what we're faced with. It is the reality, and it's just trying to deal with that and navigate with the deck of cards that we're being handed right now.
I agree with that. And some of the things that come to mind are things that scouting, like a few weeks ago, we had a guest who is a Boy Scout leader. I think that can help. I think sports, passion for sports, having a dream, somehow instilling dreams within the minds of children. If they have parents who are involved, great. If they don't, find something in some institution or a person will connect. My piano teacher was wonderful when I was growing up, and also my English literature teacher. My calculus
when you
teacher.
put it in that light, you're right. There are different people in the community that can step up and fill those gaps for the children. So you're right. There are people that are in our lives that can leave a mark on us, whether that be sports or whether that are something at the parks and recreation centers. Those are different programs that are out there to help children. It's just that in light of the economy that we're facing, so many social service programs that can help to catch those children or who aren't being able to get what they need from school and home are just so strapped themselves.
So true. And a lot of kids start working right away. And they might be working, unfortunately, in the quote informal economy, which gives them social connections, but it dooms them. It's really complicated.
Now, Shimeka, before we wrap up, you did a study on the education system. Is that what it was?
Well, what I did was I took my own experience. I wanted to better understand, because to be honest, for me, my personal experience, and it's my truth. I'm not saying it's the truth for anyone else, but it was my truth. And my truth was that I felt very damaged from the high school education that I received. And what I do is kind of discuss how I traversed from high school to college and just my journey, my experiences from different perspectives, from that of a student that went to and attended an impoverished school to that of a parent who sees their children attend a school where the resources are, there and plentiful, and their experiences are completely different from that of my own. And so what I wanted to do was kind of show that difference of how we are, as a citizen, we're all supposed to receive the same tools. We're all supposed to experience and receive the same education to help us to go out and to, take on life. But the truth of the matter is that really isn't the case for those who are impoverished, and unfortunately a lot of minorities. And I just wanted to bring that awareness to it, and just talk about my experience and how I saw it, and how, for example, I think one of the things that I shared with Dr. Nash was when you look at African Americans, you take, for example, the gifted program. African Americans are very underrepresented in the gifted program. There's only 7% of African Americans in the state of Oklahoma who are part of the gifted program. And I did that because I have a daughter, and my daughter, my youngest one, she's in the gifted program. She's on a fast track. Everything that she will be taking, she's starting her first year of high school next year. And so I'm really excited about that. And she's been very fortunate academically. All of her classes will be AP. So what I wanted to do was, I have children that are on different tracks. One is in college now, and one is he's had an IEP the entire time that he's been in public schools. And then I have one who, like I said, who's in the gifted program. And I just wanted to kind of demonstrate that difference, and my own personal experience of going through an impoverished, receiving an education at an impoverished school, and just kind of showing all those differences, and exploring education from that light.
And you're seeing all the differences. You've got a kid in every category almost. That's
Yes.
great.
I absolutely do. And you know what? That's been rather exciting, I have to say. It's been an absolute journey. I've enjoyed it. And I guess because I feel that education is so important, it is, when you think about it, it's the one thing that we're mandated to do. In some form or fashion, we have to participate in education, whether it's homeschooling or whether it's public school or private school. We are mandated to do so, and it's because education is important. And I think that everyone recognizes the positive correlations between education and civic responsibility, family structure, work. It has such a positive correlation that when one doesn't have that and they don't get to experience that, it's as if their life is subjugated and truncated before they even begin. And so I just think about how unfair that is, that a student who, simply because they attend an education that's in a different zip code, has a life that's already, challenged, when they shouldn't be. It should be fair for all of us to receive, every citizen to receive an equal education.
Yep, agreed.
I agree. It's just a matter of paying for it, and it's challenging when schools are supported by real estate tax.
Yes.
But
If I can comment to that, Dr. Nash, you're absolutely right. When you have a system that is funded according to the property tax that is located in, you're already creating a disadvantage. You have inequality. So for me, my experience of attending a school that was located in an impoverished area, where at that time the average household income, the average property value, I think, was $41,000. And then you take that and you put it just in a city that's right next door, Edmond, which is, right next door to Oklahoma City. And then that, of course, as you know, that property value is significantly different. And so then that school, of course, receives a lot more funding, and those children have access to resources that schools that are located, that children attending schools that are located in impoverished neighborhoods don't. So you're already setting it up for inequality and a disadvantage. And so I guess I don't understand a system with that kind of mechanism that, if you will, promotes inequalities by the very funding, the way that it's set up for funding, but it's our system.
And it's not even necessarily the school systems. Remember, when they tax, in most states, it goes from the county to the state, and then the state distributes it back and they don't distribute a heck of a lot of it back. It goes to them. And as a result, the kids get screwed every which way. And no matter how much you vote in, we're in California, we're always voting for kid things, and it never goes to the kids. They're all scams. We voted a lottery. It's supposed to build new schools. Yeah, right. Hasn't built a lot of new schools in 35 years. But it's a great tax on the poor. And they pay for it willingly.
That's our truth, too. We have the Oklahoma lottery, and I believe it was designed to try to combat some of those ongoing issues that we had, as far as the schools being so strapped in regards to funding. But I really haven't seen.
Right.
I haven't really seen that.
Once money leaves, it's hard to get it back. That's the problem. Well, we are at the end of our time, and this has really been fun meeting you and talking about this. Susan always has a good question at the end, something that is kind of important. I think we have an idea with you, some of what you'll say. But Susan, would you like to ask your edgy question?
Yes, here's my edgy question. And so the name of our program is Life Edge. So Shimeka, what is it that has given you an edge in life?
I think my love for the pursuit of knowledge.
That's wonderful.
And yeah, so I really do. I really do have just a innate, intrinsic love for knowledge, and I would have to say that probably is what gives my life an edge.
That's great. Keeps you going.
I've seen that, yeah, and I've seen that in your life and in your work, and I love the way that you communicate it across the generations.
Yes.
That's good. Yeah, that's all we can try to do is get our kids interested in something, curious. Get that curiosity going. And as long as we're not cats, it won't kill us, so we're good. Anyway, well, it's been a real pleasure. I'm glad you could join us today. We'd love to have you back on, because I think we just kind of touched the surface of a lot of this.
I know. It's so much more.
and if you look at it as a whole problem, it's overwhelming. But you start taking the pieces of it, and there are some big things we haven't talked about. We haven't talked about the role of government in education, how they failed miserably in most cases. Just a lot of things that could solve some of these problems. But that's, I think, for another show. I think it'll be interesting.
Well, and also how one person can be a guiding light and really change the life of another person.
That's true. That's true.
That is a very valid point.
And they can come from the strangest places, locations, who knows where. And that makes a big difference, and it can make a difference in many people's lives. And like they say, somebody can change your life, and then you change 5 other people, and 5 other people change 5 people, and we got a nice pyramid going. So.
It's funny that you said that. My daughter the other day, she said, Mom, one man can't change the world, but the world can. Oh my gosh, I can't say it the way she said it. One man can't change the world, but one man can start the change for the world to change. Oh my gosh, if she heard me butcher that like that. But it was to the effect of, we understand that you can't do everything on your own, but you can start something. You can be that change agent that has that domino effect, and you can reach out and you can have that rippling effect and begin.
Yeah, it's true.
Absolutely.
It's true. And there's that whole idea of paying it forward and everything. That's all part of it. I'll tell you, I don't know if I've told it on this show before, but it's a real short story. One time, I was about 19 years old. I was in a car with my girlfriend, and my car, actually, I was teaching her to drive, and the car just died, and she flooded the engine. So I get out, I'm in the middle of an intersection. Fortunately, it was a side street, and I'm pushing, back then cars were heavy, they were much more metal, trying to get that car up to away from the street. Out of nowhere, an older man pulls up. Incidentally, he happened to be an older black guy. Just incidental. That was a white area, by the way. Didn't matter. He got out of the car, jumped out, helped me push the car, And I said, well, thank you. Can I do something for you? And he looked at me and goes, you do something good for the next person you see. And he got in his car and left. Never saw him again. And I'm getting goosebumps. That stuck with me for my whole life. That was 40-something years ago. Still strong in memory. Mm-hmm. And just once, do something good for something else. Boom, gone.
Mm.
And, that is what life's about.
It was an angel.
He was, out of nowhere. Yeah. And just the smile, the beautiful human being. That's all it was. So, yeah, those little things in life just can change you forever.
Mm-hmm.
So, or at least make you think of things.
Yes.
Well, anyway, we appreciate having you on. Keep doing what you're doing.
My pleasure.
And Susan, we'll see you next week.
Yes,
and
definitely.
all you people watching, please subscribe. This will be up on Vimeo a little bit later today, and the live stream will be up on YouTube. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Shimeka. That was great.
Oh my gosh, I feel like it's horrible. I
And
felt
we're
like I
off.
didn't answer your question at all. Please forgive me. I'm sorry.
It's a tough question.
And you're so right, Rick. It's so much more to talk about. You just can't touch that in an hour.
No. But I bet you in a good weekend we could fix it all.
Yeah, it's such a social issue. It really is.
It is. It's breakdown of family. I'll tell you, ever since the schools became unionized, it went down the tubes. Breakdown of family, no money going to the right places, teachers who aren't qualified, religion gone. There's a lot of things
that's where it started. That was the first failure.
That was the first shot.
Out, everything else has crumbled.
Yep, I know. It's true. No foundation.
Yeah, and the issue of homeschool is a good option.
Yeah.
If the parents are there, and it was obvious, it could never have been an option in my personal life.
But the government is also making it very difficult to homeschool now. They're putting more and more rules, more regulations. They don't like you homeschooling. So
because they don't get funding. They get
that's
funding
right.
when you're
all about
in
money.
Public schools.
Yeah.
And,
and
I did the homeschool for my son. I homeschooled him and the world that we lived in then, and I know it sounds weird, but it's just so much of a difference between the world that 10 years ago and now.
Yeah,
it is completely different when you look at how expensive everything is, when you don't have the option anymore of a parent even being at home, even if they were able to be there, because you just can't afford to do it anymore.
No, that's true.
So, all those stay-at-home moms, and, I was a stay-at-home mom, it's just really not an option anymore.
No. And like you said, anybody who goes to a supermarket goes, milk costs $5? Wow.
Exactly.
It's not cheap. Exactly. Things are not cheap anymore. It's true.
No, it isn't. Everything is so much more expensive. And so that's what I mean. I think that when everyone's nerves and they're so fractured in their attention because they're having to focus on so many things, things begin to fall between the gaps. And normally it's that kid. You can't cheat work because then you'll get fired, and you can't cheat bills because then things will shut off. So who more than likely can you cheat?
Yep.
And I think that's where you kind of find a lot of those problems.
Yeah, it's true. Well, this has been fun. It's been a great conversation. So, Shimeka, we'll have to have you back on. I think it would be fun to kind of dig a little deeper into some of this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you guys would think I did too bad, yes, I'll come back.
I thought you did great. And you noticed that once you started talking about what you felt comfortable, your nerves went away?
And that is true. That is very true.
You forgot you were nervous.
Yeah. I'll have to just relax and just be myself and talk then.
Yep. And Susan, you weren't nervous, right?
No, I wasn't nervous.
See,
I
was good.
had a little bit of echo in my, so I had a little bit of difficulty listening through all the voices.
The echo's coming from you're getting the show output, which is about a quarter of a second after what we're talking. So I get it too. and I'm just used to it. I just kind of ignore it.
Yeah, sometimes it's more distracting than other times, but it was okay.
All righty. Well, hey, you guys have a great one, and we will see you soon.
You too.
Take care.
Nice
Thanks
to
a lot.
meet
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.